Israel forces take control of Syria, ordinary Syrians are waking up to a new world. While there is relief, there is also uncertainty about the fate that awaits them and some 14 million Syrian refugees. Israel continues to carry out strikes to control the buffer zone with Syria. United Nations says caution: no one should encroach on territory of Syria. Regional and global powers are monitoring the developments closely.
The regime change in Syria has rekindled intense emotions of joy, sorrow and hope among ordinary Syrians. Damascus residents voice optimism for Syria's future days after the ouster of President Bashar al-Assad.
We congratulate the great Syrian people on the victory of this blessed revolution after enduring a suffering that lasted for nearly 13 years.
67-year-old Kurdish Syrian mother Tarfa Dawood has spent over a decade searching for answers about her 4 sons who disappeared more than 12 years ago after being detained by Syrian forces.
We were working, we have a farm for chicken, and we were staying in the Katina area in homes. Demonstrations occurred there and raids happened on the village. They took away the youth and passed by our farm.
Tarfa hopes her children may be found now, whether dead or alive. Reactions have been pouring in from various regional powers who had stake in the developments in Syria. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has said Iran had evidence that the toppling of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad was a result of a plan by the US, Israel and one of Syria's neighbors that he did not name.
There should be no doubt that what happened in Syria is the result of a joint plan between the United States and the Zionists. Yes, a neighboring government of Syria has played, is playing and will continue to play a clear role in this matter.
The Kremlin downplayed the damage to Russian influence in the Middle East from the fall of Syrian ally Bashar al-Assad, saying that its focus was on Ukraine and that Moscow was in contact with the new rulers of Syria. As the Israeli army carried out strikes on what it called strategic weapons stockpiles in Syria, United Nations said it is against any violation of the territorial integrity of Syria. Earlier, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan said he hoped the instability in Syria would be concluded with an agreement in line with the demands of the Syrian people. Meanwhile, Pope Francis has called on the Syrian rebels who toppled the regime of President Bashar al-Assad to stabilize the country and govern in a way that promotes national unity. Meanwhile, India evacuated 75 nationals from Syria. All Indian nationals have safely crossed over to Lebanon and will return by available commercial flights to India. Syrian rebels seized the capital Damascus unopposed on Sunday after a lightning advance that sent Assad fleeing to Russia after a 13-year civil war and 6 decades of his family's autocratic rule. Syria's new interim Prime Minister Mohammed al-Bashir said he aimed to bring back millions of Syrian refugees, protect all citizens and provide basic services, but acknowledged it would be difficult. Shubhendu Ghosh's report, DD India.
And RT's correspondent Maria Finoshina has sent us this report on Israel's advance into Syria.
After heavy bombardments following the fall of Damascus, it looks like the IDF has wrapped up a major offensive in Syria, crippling what Assad's army spent decades building. According to Netanyahu himself, Israel has destroyed 70 to 80% of Syria's entire military capabilities in just 3 days. The goal: to prevent Assad's weapons from falling into rebel hands. Almost 500 airstrikes have hit a wide range of targets, including anti-aircraft batteries, Syrian airfields, and dozens of weapons production sites in cities like Damascus, Homs, Tartus, Latakia, and Palmyra. The destruction is countrywide. The Israeli Navy also struck 2 Syrian Navy bases at the same time, Al-Bayada and Latakia ports, destroying at least 15 Syrian vessels. On Tuesday, also reports say Israel carried out more strikes in the Syrian capital, Damascus, targeting security complex and a government research center. One of the strikes near Mezze military airport, southwest of Damascus, hit ammunition depots. The area is especially significant for its military and security and intelligence operations. Meanwhile, the IDF is also making moves on the ground. Concerned about possible rebel incursions, Israeli forces have taken full control of the buffer zone between Israel and Syria, a strip that was previously controlled by the Syrian army and a UN monitoring force without Israeli presence. But it doesn't stop there. Israel is now expanding the buffer zone, creating a larger security area free of weapons and terrorist infrastructure, they say. According to Israel's defense minister, it's all about protecting their borders. Israel also says it is a temporary measure until the situation is stabilized, but now experts say it might take years. The UN calls Israel's actions a breach of international law. Let's take a listen.
A very troubling development. We are continuing to see Israeli movements and bombardments into Syrian territory. This needs to stop.
Israel won't tolerate an extremist Islamic terrorist entity operating along its borders, vowing to take any action necessary to eliminate the threat. So what will this stability look like? It's hard to say right now. The coming days, or maybe months, will likely reveal what's in store for Syria's future.
And to decode the Syria situation, joining me now is Dr. Kinvira Jangid, West Asia expert from OP Jindal Global University. Good evening and welcome, sir. Now, dramatic changes are taking place in Syria. What do you see as the most important developments after the fall of Assad?
Thank you. Well, the most important positive development one can say is that there is no forced flow of people out of Syria at the moment. One of the interesting things that the HTS leader Al-Jawani, what he has done is that he has distanced fairly from Al-Qaeda's remains as well as the Islamic State from where he was once brought to Syria. I think he took the benefit of the resentment against Assad. One of the families that you showed that they were looking for their children after 13 years. This is the year 2011 when there was an Arab Spring in Syria.
Right.
And Bashar al-Assad, being an eye doctor and being a modern educated man from the Western societies and education, everybody assumed that he will modernize Syria. And Syria was fairly modern, remains modern and a secular country. But his hasty oppression of the Arab Spring by force really created a resentment that I think got cashed by these groups. HTS is certainly one, Kurdish group is another one. And these groups really waited till Iran and Hezbollah will be no more in a position to support Assad. So Assad survived for 13 years in a very violent manner, just taking the help of three players, Iran, Hezbollah, and Russia. If these were not there, he would have gone long time back.
Right. Professor Jangid, while Assad is now the past of Syria, do we have a clearer sense of what kind of Syria do Hayat Tahrir al-Sham HTS, which is led by Abu al-Jawani, as you mentioned, what kind of Syria do they envision and seek to create? How is it different from the one created by Assad?
But if we talk from the people's perspective, it won't be different. Maybe it would be more unstable and violent for some time. Syria right now is divided into three parts. So Al-Jawani has one part, which is the center, and then you have the Kurdish that have the border with Turkey, and then you have the coastal area where you have the Alawite, the Shia pro-Assad, rebels or the supporters. So I think we will see a very, very unstable, domestically violent Syria, that one group will try to minimize the territory of the other. So there would be a lot of infighting within Syria. Syria for the outside world might not be such a trouble. Okay. In the last civil war, the world had to deal with the Syrian refugees. That won't be a situation for the rest of the world to respond.
But is that situation likely to reverse? The interim Prime Minister of Syria has said that they would try to get the refugees back. There are some 14 million of them, mostly, I believe, in Europe, in different countries like Germany.
So the European refugees and the refugees in, let's say, first world countries might not be even inclined to come back. They have been really given support and asylum and all kind of facilities that really took a great toll on the European.
Would there be pressure on them to return? Because those are also the kind of vibes that we are getting from these countries.
No, there is a pressure in Turkey. So Turkey has 3 million refugees, and Turkish opposition parties for years have been making this an agenda. And now the very first set of refugees who have returned to Turkey, returned to Syria, are the Turkish refugees. So I think Turkey will be in a way able to force these 3 million people back. But the European societies and the governments will not really create any kind of conditions for the refugees to leave. That's against their principles. Unless there would be a right-wing government of one or two European countries that will make it an agenda. But I don't think that's going to be a concern. I think the only concern is the regional concern. The region is deeply, let's understand, Middle East is not an easy place in terms of its democratic, sovereign international laws. Meaning countries are very sectarian within themselves and countries are very territorial with their neighbors. So I think each country, like Iranian leader, when he accused Israel and US to have a conspiracy against Assad, he also said there is another country in the neighborhood that he didn't name. What that country be? I think that's Lebanon. Now, when Hezbollah is gone, Lebanon is in a way getting back to Syria. Syria is a one country that went into Lebanon, made a civil war in Lebanon for 15 years. It actually claimed Lebanon is greater Syria once upon a time. So a certain population of Lebanon, like the Sunnis and the Maronite Christians, I think they are terribly upset about what happened to them through Syrian intervention. So now Hezbollah's threat is gone, and Lebanon must have played played a hidden role in letting
Right, a little
really
more on that, Dr. Jangid. The divisions that you're talking about does demonstrate the manner in which Syria, like many parts of the West Asia, has been a playground for bigger powers. There is Russia, United States, Israel, also Turkey. How are the dynamics likely to change after fall of Assad and with this new regime?
Well, if we talk from geopolitical perspective, it's a situation that American, Israeli security and strategic leaders have been in a way desiring for. They really did not want Assad to be there because Assad, in a way, to survive, needed the support of Iran. And in return, he let Syria be a smuggling zone for the weapons from Iran to Lebanon for Hezbollah. Now, when Syria is not under Assad and it's under a Sunni leader, I think it will not play any friendly role for the Iranian interest. So the most upset country right now in the region is Iran. It lost a great strategic advantage, but the European and the Western powers, much in sync with the Israeli interest, are happy and would just like to see the situation be stable under one Sunni leader, even if there are some group fightings for a year or two. Another very interesting regional player who might change all of it is Turkey. Now, Turkey doesn't support what Iran was doing in Syria, but Turkey also doesn't know what to do with the Kurdish problem. And Erdogan might be rhetorically very provocative, but he's an old man, not very strong in the Turkish politics as well. So how much he would really risk his own domestic interest to meddle and make some kind of a change? And what change? I think he cannot really. HTS seems to be holding the power. So this particular leadership of HTS will hold much of the Syria.
Right. And finally, how should India be looking at these developments in Syria? Some 75 Indians have been evacuated very recently. India has had civilizational link with the region, but how do we see the present developments?
Well, India thankfully doesn't have any strategic interest tied to the domestic or the stable Syrian territorial existence. So India's immediate interests are not harmed. If you look at the number of Indians rescued, it's a very minuscule number, 75 people, less than 100. It means that it's a country that's really not in our immediate concerns, strategically speaking. At a very humanitarian level, respecting the international law, India can just ask for the people of Syria to now decide for themselves. And India would ask countries like Israel or others not to really take territories or not to really force any kind of a political actor upon the people of Syria. Maybe Arab Spring and some of the people who really think they can decide for themselves will have a say.
On that note, Dr. Kinviraj Jangir, thank you very much for joining us on the News Hour and sharing your perspective.